Good day and welcome. Today we'll be taking an excursion into what always was and still is a theological spin zone and a battle zone, particularly when we come to the verse Daniel 9:27. We'll be heading off on an investigative biblical study of the chronology of Daniel's prophecy of the 70 weeks. And as we shall discover, the first part of that 70 weeks is a timeline of 69 weeks made up of 7 weeks and 62 weeks. We're going to give an explanation for why the 7 weeks is so important in a subsequent video, because it does relate to the Jubilee cycles. This prophecy of the 70 weeks remains a spiritual battle zone here on earth and also up in the second heaven, in the realms of the angelic principalities and powers. We shall discover that there is a huge information war being waged here, with troll-like blocking spirits swirling around the passage of Daniel 9:27 like you would not believe. There has also been a curse placed upon those who would dare to calculate the 70 weeks prophecy. So, saints, put on your spiritual armor and take up the sword of the Spirit of God's holy word, and by all means be prayerful and watchful as you go out on this study. This is a video presentation of the 70 weeks prophecy. There are about a dozen articles on this subject at the website endtimepilgrim.org. It's important to understand that the 70 weeks prophecy emerged out of a devotion. It was not an intellectual pursuit. As we see Daniel 9 open up, it's a long prayer in which he is appealing for God's mercy in relationship to the restoration of Israel. And God answers the prayer very wonderfully in the 70 weeks prophecy. He is actually going to be giving in that prophecy the timing of the two comings of Messiah. So the 70 weeks prophecy, given to us in 4 verses in Daniel chapter 9, when it is faithfully interpreted, is going to allow the covenant people of God to do some calculations and to know when to expect the arrival of their Messiah. The terminus of the 69 weeks will give them the arrival time for the first coming of their Messiah, and the terminus of the future 70th week will give them the arrival time for the second coming of their Messiah. We are told in Daniel 9 that Daniel's prayer, which led to the angelic visitation and to the 70 weeks prophecy, came in the first year of Darius. We are also told in Daniel 6 that there was a time when the prayers and intercessions Daniel offered up on behalf of his covenant people angered his fellow governors in the Medo-Persian regime, and this was also during the reign of Darius. Daniel's prayers and his intercessions on this particular occasion caused him to be cast into the den of lions. If we think about it, this lion's den incident probably came quite early in the 2-year reign of Darius the Mede, who was the uncle to Cyrus, and happened when the governors were being assigned their new posts in the Medo-Persian regime. So it is quite possible that this politically incorrect prayer that Daniel offered up in a governmental institution on that occasion, which caused him to be thrown into the den of lions, may have been the prayer we see in Daniel 9, the very same prayer that brought us the 70 weeks prophecy. So what is the message that the principalities and powers and denizens of darkness want so desperately to prevent us from receiving? We go to Daniel 9, verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. So we are looking here for a royal decree or a commandment which authorizes the returning exiles to do this: rebuild the gates and the walls of Jerusalem. And the second part goes on to, unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. So a certain royal edict initiates a timeline of 7 sevens and 62 sevens, making a total of 69 sevens of biblical years. Then it comes to an abrupt, screeching halt. The time period is dispensed to us in terms of years, and the question is, what sort of years are we talking about? How many days are in those years as they're issued to us from the throne of God? Are they solar years of 365.24199 days, such as we see in this fallen cosmos? The solar or calendar year is the time of the orbit of the Earth around the Sun. Sir Isaac Newton spent half his lifetime researching the 70 weeks prophecy. We're going to look into this in a future video because it's quite interesting. His work has been hidden and has only recently come out. In fact, it came out recently in Israel. Newton used solar years of 365.25 days and the decree of Ezra in his unsuccessful attempts to calculate the 70 weeks prophecy. And so we ask, are the years that we see dispensed to us in terms of weeks of years, years of 360 days? As we showed in the previous video on biblical or prophetic time, the Holy Scriptures present us with 2 Rosetta stones for biblical time. The first was back during the flood of Noah, and it gives us the biblical month as 30 days. The other is the vision John saw in Revelation chapter 12, in which he showcases the flight and exile of the woman, God's covenant people, during the final 3.5 years or 1260 days of this age. This is the latter half of Daniel's future 70th week. And our scriptures are as follows. In verse 6 we read, "Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days." And the mirror verse is in Revelation 12:14, being presented to us in different time units. "But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time, from the presence of the serpent." So when we divide the 1260 days by the 3.5 years, we get 360 days. And this fixes for us the biblical year as 360 days. This wonderful image is by Pat Marvenko-Smith, and her website gallery is revelationillustrated.com. So there we have our second Rosetta Stone for biblical time. It confirms for us that the biblical year is a perfect number of 360 days. Okay, we've rambled long enough. Let's cut to the chase and calculate the 69 weeks. A week is a 7. We're looking at 7 sevens and 62 sevens to make 69 sevens of years. 69 sevens of biblical years, or 69 times 7 equals 483 biblical years. So we do the math on the 69 weeks, and the 483 years, being biblical years, are multiplied by 360 to give us 173,880 days. The Magi made it their business to look into the prophecies of Daniel, and they did their homework faithfully in the fear and in the love of God. How about us? Well, let's get on with it, shall we? 173,880 days. We divide that by 365.2422, being the number of days in a solar year, and we get 476.0677 solar years. This turns out to be 476 years plus 24.7 days, or basically 476 calendar years plus 25 days. To wrap up, we're just going to give a quick little calculator overview to confirm the calculations that we've just done. We're going to do the same calculations that we did earlier with the calculator, and you'll be able to confirm that the numbers are true and correct. And we're going to start with the 69 weeks, which is 69 sevens of years, and see that we have 483 biblical years. And now we multiply that by 360, and we get this number, which is 173,880 days. This is a number that Sir Robert Anderson arrived at in his calculation of the 69 weeks back in the 19th century, and as he described in his book The Coming Prince. We're going to take this number of days and translate back into cosmic time and determine the number of years for the 69 weeks in terms of solar years or Gregorian years. So we divide by 365.2422, and we get this number here, which is 476 and a fraction of a year. We're going to determine what that fraction of a year is, because that's going to be quite interesting to us, since we're connecting into 2 Nisan moons 476 years apart. There's a fraction here, and it's quite a significant one, it seems, so we're going to find out what it is. We will subtract off our 476 years, and we get that number. We convert that back in terms of days by multiplying by 365.2422, and we get this number here, which is 24.7. So we're looking here at a very significant excess of days over and above the 476 years, about 25 days. This basically confirms that if we're going from the edict in the month of Nisan to Palm Sunday, or the appearance of Messiah the Prince in the month of Nisan, this must be a terminus going into Palm Sunday during a year that sees a late Passover. That is a year that sees an embolismal year, an extra month of Adar, inserted into the Hebrew calendar. This happens 7 times every 19 years in the Metonic cycle. And so this basically confirms that if we're going to make that connection into Messiah the Prince, we have to arrive at a year that is an embolismal year. So there's our calculation: 476 years and 25 days. I hope you're enjoying this series on the 70 Weeks Prophecy. Once again, there are some further articles on this subject over at the website endtimepilgrim.org.